I walked out of the logistics corporate building where I work, my mind still buzzing heavily with supply chain data, international routing schedules, and the dull, lingering ache of a brutal 10-hour shift. As a senior supply chain analyst, my entire day is spent managing chaos. I track hundreds of freight trucks, negotiate with furious vendors, and ensure millions of dollars in inventory reach their destinations on time. It is a high-pressure environment that demands absolute perfection. Any minor miscalculation on my end could cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the time I clock out, I am usually running on nothing but caffeine and sheer willpower. The Denver air hit my face the moment I pushed through the heavy glass revolving doors. It was a crisp, biting cold, the kind of aggressive chill that bites at your cheeks and promises an unforgiving, harsh winter ahead. I pulled my wool coat tighter around my shoulders, burying my chin into my scarf. My leather boots crunched softly against the salted pavement as I headed toward the employee parking structure. It was a massive, multi-level concrete labyrinth bathed in flickering fluorescent lights. I made my way to level 3, Row G, spot 42. My spot. I knew exactly where I parked my 2024 custom Ford Bronco. I always knew. For 6 agonizingly long years, I had tracked every single penny I earned. I skipped vacations with friends. I ate cheap instant noodles in my tiny apartment while my peers were dining out. I worked countless weekends, volunteering for every holiday shift just to accumulate overtime pay. I sacrificed a massive portion of my 20s just to grip the steering wheel of that $65,000 machine. It wasn't just a car to me. It was mine. It was the physical, undeniable proof that I existed in this world, that I mattered, and that I was capable of building something beautiful and solid out of the invisible, neglected life I had been handed by my family. It was my sanctuary, customized down to the very last detail, featuring premium suede seats, heavy-duty all-terrain tires, and an upgraded sound system. But when I turned the familiar corner onto Row G, my boots stopped moving. I froze. Spot 42 was completely empty. I blinked hard, thinking maybe my exhausted brain was misfiring. I rubbed my eyes, but the reality remained unchanged. There was no shattered safety glass sparkling on the dark asphalt. There were no aggressive black skid marks indicating a struggle or a forced tow. There was no bright orange parking violation sticker slapped onto the nearby concrete pillar. There was absolutely nothing. Just a rectangular, oil-stained patch of dirty concrete where my entire world was supposed to be resting safely. My heart immediately slammed against my ribs so hard and so fast that it physically hurt my chest. My breath hitched sharply in my throat, trapping the cold air in my lungs. I stood there, a successful, 30-year-old independent woman, suddenly feeling exactly like a terrified, helpless child lost in a supermarket. A violent tremor started in my hands and quickly spread up my arms. My fingers felt totally numb as I frantically fumbled through my heavy leather tote bag, blindly searching for my smart key. I found the smooth plastic and pressed the red panic button over and over again, desperately praying to hear that familiar, heavy horn echo through the silent garage. Silence. Only the distant hum of traffic outside answered me. I started walking up and down the row, my pace quickening into a panic jog. Maybe I parked on a different level? No, I never parked anywhere else. Spot 40. Spot 41. Spot 42. All empty. I checked the adjacent rows, my chest heaving as I scanned the sea of sedans and minivans. Nothing. My dream vehicle, the ultimate reward for my endless sacrifices, was gone. A cold, sickening sweat broke out across my forehead despite the freezing temperature. The panic was sharp, suffocating, and incredibly disorienting. In my absolute desperation, trying to grasp onto any logical explanation, I pulled out my phone and dialed my mother, Phaedra. I didn't even think about our strained relationship. I just needed someone to ground me. I needed her to tell me it was going to be okay, that maybe the building management towed it by mistake for cleaning, that I wasn't losing my mind. The phone rang twice. Mom. I gasped into the receiver, the wind knocking the remaining air completely out of my lungs. My car is gone. My Bronco is gone. I'm standing in the parking lot, and it's just gone. Do I call the police? Do I call building security? What do I do? I waited for the sharp gasp of maternal concern. I waited for the urgent, rapid-fire questions about my safety. Instead, what came through the speaker was a soft, incredibly dismissive sigh. It was followed by a sentence that didn't just break my heart, it ripped the solid ground right out from under my trembling feet. "Oh, Veda, relax," my mother said, her voice dripping with casual, horrifying annoyance. "We gave it to your sister. She needs it more right now." The silence that followed her words was deafening. The biting wind whipping through the parking garage seemed to instantly stop. Time itself stopped. "We gave it to your sister." The words echoed violently inside my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull until they morphed into an agonizing, silent scream that I couldn't let out. I didn't know it in that exact second, but that was the precise moment the dutiful, quiet, compliant daughter they had raised took her final, dying breath. And someone entirely different woke up in her place. I stood completely paralyzed on the cold concrete, my brain desperately trying to process the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. To truly understand why those few words hurt so deeply, why they felt like a physical knife twisting in my gut, you have to understand the vast museum of scars I carry inside me. I was born the invisible child. In modern psychology, they call it the glass child. You could look right through me and never see a single thing. My younger sister, Eloan, was the golden child. From the moment she was born, the sun, the moon, and the stars revolved exclusively around whatever mood she woke up in. If Eloan simply sneezed, my parents bought out the entire pharmacy and treated her like a fragile porcelain doll. If I fell and broke a bone, I was sternly told to walk it off, stop seeking unnecessary attention, and stop being so dramatic. Standing in that empty parking spot, my mind violently dragged me back in time. I was 17 years old again. I had worked at a rundown local diner for 3 grueling months. I came home every single night smelling like stale French fry grease, bleach, and exhaustion, just to save $400 for my senior prom dress. It was a stunning emerald green, made of genuine silk, and it was the first piece of clothing that ever made me feel truly beautiful. The night before the dance, I came home from a late shift to find the dress completely shredded on my bedroom floor. Eloan, who was 14 at the time, was sitting casually on my bed, playing with a pair of heavy fabric scissors. She told my parents she got mad because I wouldn't let her wear my favorite necklace. My mother walked in, looked at the ruined, expensive silk, looked at my devastated face, and merely sighed. She told me Eloan was just expressing her big emotions and that I should just use some tape and safety pins to fix it. She told me to be the bigger person. I didn't go to my senior prom. I spent the night crying in the dark. Then came the college fund disaster. By the time I was 20, I had meticulously saved $5,000 in a joint high school banking account my parents had set up for me when I was a minor. I was exactly 1 week away from paying my crucial university tuition for the semester. When I went to the bank branch to transfer the funds, the teller informed me the balance was zero. My father, Orson, had withdrawn every single cent. When I confronted them in the living room, crying so hard I couldn't breathe, my father didn't even bother to look up from the television screen. He casually told me that Eloan needed a financial push to start her own business. She had gotten involved in a highly predatory multi-level marketing scheme selling terrible, cheap-scented candles. My $5,000, my entire future, vanished in a month. Eloan got bored of selling candles and quit. I had to take on a third job working grueling night shifts at an industrial warehouse just to avoid dropping out of school. They never apologized. Not once. They fully expected me to absorb the massive blow, process the deep trauma in total silence, and keep moving forward. Because Veda is strong. Veda can handle anything. Veda doesn't need us. But this? This was not a $400 prom dress. This was not a $5,000 tuition payment. This was a custom-built, highly modified vehicle worth exactly $65,000, registered legally and solely in my name. I bought it with my own blood, sweat, and endless tears. I picked out the custom stitching. I paid premium prices for the upgraded suspension. How did they even get it? The keys were securely inside my apartment, sitting on the kitchen counter. Or so I firmly thought. I looked down at my phone. My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped the expensive device. I opened my specialized vehicle tracking application, the one linked directly to the Bronco's advanced onboard computer. The screen loaded, spinning, spinning, spinning in a circle. Then, a stark white message popped up on the black screen: location services manually disabled. Someone had to physically sit inside the vehicle, go into the complex dashboard settings menu, enter a bypass PIN, and turn off the GPS tracking. They didn't just casually take it. They meticulously planned it. My parents had used their emergency spare key to enter my apartment while they knew I was at work. They violated my private sanctuary, took my smart key from the counter, drove downtown to my office building, located my vehicle in a massive garage, and drove it away. They literally stole it. The screen of my phone suddenly lit up brightly again, breaking me out of my horrifying realization. It was an incoming call. My mother was calling back. I stared at the flashing name on the screen, feeling the freezing winter air bite sharply at my face. The obedient, broken daughter they raised would have answered the phone and immediately negotiated her own surrender. I pressed the green accept button, holding the phone slowly to my ear, waiting for her to speak first. "Veda, are you still there?" My mother chuckled softly, completely unbothered. "Honestly, the dramatic silence is absolutely unnecessary." "Mom," I said. My voice dropped a full octave. It sounded so hollow and metallic that it felt like it belonged to a complete stranger. "Where exactly is my vehicle?" "I just told you," she replied, her tone rapidly shifting from a casual chuckle to a slightly irritated reprimand. "Eloan has it. She has a very important new job opportunity lined up, and she absolutely cannot be seen taking the public bus. It's highly unprofessional. You work in a corporate office, Veda. You sit comfortably behind a desk all day long. You can just take the commuter train for a few weeks until your sister gets on her feet." A few weeks. She said it with the same level of nonchalance as if she were asking to borrow a cheap umbrella on a rainy day. "Mom," I forced the heavy words through tightly gritted teeth, my jaw aching from the tension. "Eloan has completely wrecked 4 cars in the last 5 years. 4 cars. Oh, please stop bringing up the past, Veda," she snapped, her voice rising in defense of her precious golden child. The past? The past she was referring to was barely 6 months ago. I remembered the 4th car crash with crystal clarity. It was a decent-used sedan my parents had purchased for her right after she totaled the 3rd one. She had been driving down a quiet residential street, holding her smartphone up with one hand to record a silly video for social media, completely ignoring the road ahead. She drifted over the line and smashed straight into a solid concrete utility pole at 40 miles per hour. The entire front engine block folded inward like a cheap accordion. When I rushed to the hospital emergency room in a sheer panic, she had a minor, tiny scratch on her left arm, but she was wailing and sobbing like she had just survived a horrific war zone. My parents hovered over her hospital bed, stroking her hair, wiping her tears, and telling her it was the car's fault for having bad brakes, the road's fault for being too narrow, the pole's fault for being there. It was never, ever Eloan's fault. "She doesn't know how to drive safely, Mom," I said, my voice trembling heavily with deeply suppressed rage. "She is reckless. She destroys absolutely everything she touches. You broke into my secure apartment, you took my keys without asking, and you stole a $65,000 truck that you did not pay a single dime for." "Stole." My father Orson's booming, aggressive voice suddenly echoed loudly through the speaker. He had been listening quietly on speakerphone the entire time, waiting for his moment to strike. "Watch your mouth, young lady. Nobody stole anything from you. It is a family vehicle. We are a family, and families share their resources. Remember when we let you live comfortably under our roof for 18 years? You owe us your life, Veda. Stop acting like an entitled brat." I slowly closed my eyes. The cold wind whipped my hair across my face. Here it was. The old, incredibly familiar script. The ultimate debt of existence. They honestly believed that providing basic food and shelter to a child they chose to bring into the world gave them a permanent, unlimited access pass to my bank account and my property for the rest of my adult life. I bought that car, Dad, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerously quiet, terrifyingly calm whisper. My legal name is on the title document. My name is on the insurance policy. My hard-earned money paid the dealership. It is not a family vehicle. It is my vehicle. I need you to bring it back right now. Bring it directly to my office building, park it in the exact spot you took it from, and leave the keys with the security guard at the front desk. If you do that right now, I will forget this ever happened. It was an incredibly generous offer. It was the absolute last shred of mercy, the final drop of familial love I had left in my exhausted soul for the people who gave me life. I was giving them one final chance to correct a massive mistake. My father scoffed loudly and obnoxiously into the receiver. You are not in a position to give us orders, Veda. You are acting like a cold-blooded, deeply selfish brat. Your sister is finally trying to make something positive of herself, and instead of supporting her like a good older sister, you're throwing a massive tantrum over a useless piece of metal. You are 20 minutes away from the train station. Start walking. Dad, I am not playing games with you. Bring the car back. Or what? He challenged, his voice dripping with heavy condescension and arrogance. What exactly are you going to do, Veda? Are you going to cry about it? You have always been so overly dramatic. Eloan is using the truck. That is final. Stop being a selfish bitch and grow up. Selfish. The word hit me right in the center of my chest, but shockingly, it didn't hurt like it usually did. For 30 years, being called selfish by them would send me into a spiral of guilt and frantic people-pleasing. But this time, it felt completely different. It felt like a heavy, rusted key finally turning in a massive iron lock. All those painful years of swallowing my pride, of fixing broken things that weren't mine to fix, of pretending their blatant, unapologetic favoritism didn't slowly eat away at my sanity. They heavily relied on my fierce independence and strength to carry their burdens, but they relentlessly weaponized that same exact strength against me whenever I demanded basic human respect. They honestly thought I would just take it. They thought the invisible, easily managed daughter would just sigh, fade quietly into the background, and walk through the freezing cold to take the commuter train home, crying silent, pathetic tears in the dark while her sister drove a luxury vehicle. Don't make a total fool of yourself, Veda, my mother chimed in, her voice soft, but heavily laced with toxic venom. You've always been able to handle yourself perfectly fine. Don't ruin your sister's big moment just because you're harboring deep jealousy. Jealousy. I opened my eyes and looked at the desperately empty parking space. I looked at the dark oil stain on the concrete. I took a massive, deep breath. The freezing Denver air aggressively filled my lungs, rapidly cooling the burning, chaotic rage in my chest and transforming it into something made of pure ice. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, what? My mother asked, a hint of confusion briefly replacing her smug tone. I will handle myself. I didn't wait for her to respond. I didn't wait to hear my father's voice again. I pulled the phone aggressively away from my ear and hit the red end call button. The screen went instantly black. I stood completely alone in the massive parking garage. The heavy silence wrapped tightly around me, but this time, it wasn't a lonely, pathetic silence. It was the terrifying, heavy silence right before a massive hurricane makes landfall. I opened my phone's keypad. My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't call the building's private security team. I didn't call a local taxi company to take me home. I didn't call a friend to vent. I dialed 911. The phone rang exactly one time before a voice answered. 911, what is your exact location and emergency? The dispatcher's voice was sharp, calm, steady, and wonderfully professional. I need to report a Grand Theft Auto, I said. My voice did not shake. My hands were finally steady. I clearly stated my exact location in the corporate parking structure, the specific make, the custom model, and the license plate number of my $65,000 Ford Bronco. The dispatcher typed rapidly, the clicking of her keyboard audible through the speaker. An officer is being dispatched to your location now. Please remain in a safe area. I hung up the phone. The die was cast. The bridge was not just burned, it was completely obliterated by a tactical strike. I stood by the empty parking spot, feeling the cold wind, and for the very first time in my 30 years of existence, I felt incredibly, dangerously powerful. 20 grueling minutes later, a heavily marked police patrol car rolled slowly up the concrete ramp of the parking garage, its thick tires squeaking sharply against the polished floor. A female police officer stepped out of the driver's side. Her silver name tag read Gentry. She was tall, with sharp, highly observant eyes that immediately scanned the perimeter before locking onto me. She moved with a strict, no-nonsense efficiency that instantly made the unstable ground beneath my feet feel much safer. She pulled out a thick black notepad, clicked her pen, and approached me with purposeful strides. "Are you the registered owner of the missing 2024 Ford Bronco?" she asked, her voice projecting authority. "Yes, officer," I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through my veins. "My name is Veda. I have all the legal documentation right here on my phone. The state registration, the full coverage insurance policy, and the finalized purchase agreement directly from the dealership. The vehicle is paid in full. There are no liens and it is under my name only. No one else has any legal right to it." Officer Gentry took my phone and reviewed the digital documents very carefully, her eyes flicking rapidly from the bright screen to my face to ensure everything matched. "Everything seems to be perfectly in order," she finally said, handing the phone back. "Now, this is the most critical question. Do you have the physical keys on you?" "No," I swallowed hard, the reality of the home invasion hitting me again. "I left my smart key inside my locked apartment this morning. My parents, however, have an emergency spare key to my front door. I gave it to them 2 years ago. They went inside my home without my permission, took the car keys from my kitchen counter, and drove the vehicle away while I was working my shift here." Officer Gentry stopped writing. She looked at me, her expression suddenly tightening into something unreadable. "Your parents took it? Have you explicitly contacted them to confirm this?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "They openly admitted to taking it over the phone. They stated they gave it to my younger sister for a job. They completely refused to return it, and my father told me to take the train home." She let out a very slow, measured breath, tapping her metal pen rhythmically against the notepad. "Ma'am, I have to ask you this, and I need you to think carefully. Are you absolutely 100% certain you want to proceed with this criminal report? Family disputes over property can get very messy very fast. If you officially file this as a stolen vehicle report, I will immediately put out a BOLO, a be on the lookout warrant, across the entire state database. If highway patrol units spot that vehicle, they will not treat it like a simple traffic stop. They will conduct a felony stop. That means multiple cruisers, officers with weapons drawn, occupants ordered out onto the ground at gunpoint, and arrests will absolutely be made. Your sister will go to county jail. There is no turning back, no canceling it once this is entered into the system." I looked directly into Officer Gentry's eyes. She wasn't judging me. She wasn't trying to talk me out of it. She was simply giving me the harsh reality of the situation. She was giving me the fundamental choice my parents never, ever gave me. I thought about the ruined green prom dress lying in shreds on my bedroom floor. I thought about the stolen $5,000 college fund that forced me to work graveyard shifts. I thought about the 4 separate cars Aloan had recklessly destroyed without facing a single consequence. I thought about my father aggressively calling me a selfish bitch while my mother laughed at my pain. "I am certain," I said, my voice echoing clearly off the concrete walls. "They do not have my permission to operate that vehicle. It is stolen property. Please issue the felony warrant." Officer Gentry nodded. Just a single, firm, highly respectful nod. "Understood. The law does not care if they share your DNA, Veda. Theft is theft." Hearing her say that out loud felt like someone had handed me a heavy, impenetrable steel shield. For my entire life, I had been aggressively brainwashed to believe that family meant suffering in silence, that boundaries were a sign of disrespect. Now, a sworn officer of the law was validating my reality and telling me that my boundaries actually mattered. Gentry took down the rest of my detailed statement, handed me a business card with an official case number written on the back, and instructed me to go home, lock my doors, and wait for further updates. I ordered an Uber to take me back to my apartment complex. The 30-minute ride was a chaotic blur of neon streetlights and dark, icy roads. When I finally unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside, the familiar space felt deeply violated. The spare apartment key I had foolishly given my parents for emergencies was obviously gone from the brass hook by the door. The spot on the granite kitchen counter where my car keys usually sat was agonizingly empty. They had invaded my safe sanctuary. I sat down heavily on the edge of my living room couch, staring blankly at the white wall. Slowly, my phone started to vibrate against the coffee table. The massive fallout was beginning. The first aggressive wave of text messages was from my mother. "Mom, your father is very upset with your disrespectful attitude today. You need to call him and apologize immediately." "Mom, Veda, answer me right now. Eloan is so stressed out because of your terrible behavior." I completely ignored them. I didn't even flinch. But then, a picture message came through with a loud chime. It was from a phone number I hadn't saved in my contacts, but I recognized Eloan's face immediately. I opened the high-resolution image. It was a selfie of Eloan and her perpetually unemployed, deadbeat boyfriend, Calloway. They were sitting comfortably inside my car. I recognized the expensive, custom suede stitching on the headrests immediately. Calloway, wearing a dirty baseball cap, had his filthy, mud-caked work boots propped aggressively up on my pristine dashboard. Eloan was holding a massive iced coffee in one hand, leaning comfortably against the center console. The caption underneath the photo read, "Thanks for the late birthday present, big sis. Rides like an absolute dream. Next stop, freedom." My stomach violently churned. They weren't just driving to a professional new job. They were taking my car on a joyride. I zoomed in tightly on the photo, my blood boiling with intense heat as I saw Calloway's muddy boots actively grinding dirt into the expensive dashboard trim I had waited 6 long months to have imported and professionally installed. I didn't reply to the taunt. I didn't text back a string of angry curses. I just took a clean screenshot of the message, ensuring the phone number and timestamp were visible, and saved it to a secure, locked folder on my device. Let them laugh. Let them take their smug selfies. The timer had already started counting down, and they had absolutely no idea the legal wrecking ball was swinging straight toward their heads at terminal velocity. By the time the sun fully rose the next morning, casting a pale, gray light over Denver, the police department had officially entered my vehicle's identification number into the National Stolen Database. I woke up after barely 3 hours of highly restless, nightmare-filled sleep, feeling like I had swallowed a pound of dry sand. My smartphone had practically melted overnight from the sheer volume of aggressive notifications. It seemed my parents had finally realized I wasn't backing down or returning their calls, and as a result, they had summoned their loyal flying monkeys to do their dirty work. The phone screen lit up brightly with an incoming call from Aunt Tamsin. She was my father's older sister. Tamsin was the undisputed matriarch of the family gossip mill, a deeply bitter woman who thrived on manufacturing drama and firmly believed that blood relation meant you could commit literal murder and expect your family to hide the body. I heavily debated ignoring the call, but a sick, morbid curiosity made me slide my thumb to press accept. "Veda Reina." Aunt Tamsin's shrill, ear-piercing voice shrieked through the phone speaker before I could even utter a greeting. "What on earth is wrong with your brain? Your poor mother has been crying hysterically all morning long. How could you do something this evil to your own flesh and blood?" "Aunt Tamsin," I started, intentionally keeping my voice flat and neutral, refusing to give her the emotional reaction she desperately wanted. "They broke into my home and stole my car." "They did not steal anything, you dramatic child," she barked angrily. "They simply borrowed it for your sister because she needed help." "Good Lord, Veda, you make a massive 6-figure salary. You're sitting on a huge pile of money, and you want to completely ruin your sister's life over a stupid truck? You are the absolute disgrace of this bloodline." She desperately needs to get to her important new job, I said, intentionally repeating my mother's specific lie just to see exactly what Tamsin would say in response. She can take the public bus like everyone else. Job? What job? Tamsin scoffed loudly, a harsh, grating sound. Don't act dumb with me. You know exactly what they are actually doing. Eloan and Calloway are going on a massive road trip across the state line to celebrate their one-year anniversary. Calloway doesn't have a working car because his engine blew out last month, so your amazing parents stepped up to help them have a romantic getaway. It's beautiful, really. And you're trying to maliciously ruin their vacation by acting like a spoiled, jealous brat. The entire world violently tilted on its axis. I sat down incredibly hard on a wooden kitchen chair, my hand gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned pure white. A road trip. A romantic getaway. There was no professional job. There was no sudden career emergency. My parents had intentionally stolen my $65,000 custom vehicle so my sister and her utterly worthless boyfriend could go on an extended joyride across state lines. They lied directly to my face without a single ounce of hesitation. They actively tried to make me feel like I was crazy and unsupportive for not funding my sister's career, when in harsh reality, they were just illegally funding her romantic vacation with my highly expensive property. I felt violently ill. I dropped the phone on the table, rushed to the stainless steel kitchen sink, and dry-heaved aggressively, coughing as the heavy, sickening betrayal settled deep into my bones. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it all. The utter lack of basic human respect. They viewed my entire life, my difficult achievements, and my endless hard work as nothing more than a convenient resource pool for Eloan to freely drain whenever she wanted to have a little bit of fun. Veda? Are you listening to me? Tamsin yelled loudly through the phone still resting on the table. You better call the police precinct right this second and tell them it was a massive misunderstanding. If you get your sister arrested on her special anniversary trip, I swear to God, the entire family will disown you. I slowly walked back, picked up the phone, and held it to my ear. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. The deeply emotional, wounded part of my brain had officially shut down, entirely replaced by a cold, highly calculating machine. Consider me completely disowned, Tamsin, I whispered into the receiver, and ended the call. I immediately went into my settings and blocked her number. I blocked my mother. I blocked my father. I blocked every single toxic relative who had sent me an abusive text message overnight. The Great Purge had officially begun. I walked purposefully over to my desk and opened my work laptop. As a supply chain analyst, tracking complex logistics was literally my highly paid profession. When I originally purchased the Bronco, I knew exactly how frequently high-end cars were stolen in the Denver area. So, I didn't just rely on the standard manufacturer's built-in GPS that any amateur could easily disable from the dashboard screen. I had paid an independent mechanic to install a secondary, hardwired fleet tracking chip hidden deep inside the metal undercarriage of the truck. It ran silently on its own independent battery source and transmitted encrypted data directly to a secure logistics software I used daily for my corporate work. I logged into the highly secure portal, typed in my specific vehicle identification number, and hit the Enter key. A detailed topographical map of the United States popped up on the screen. A tiny bright red dot blinked rapidly. It was moving incredibly fast. They were already completely out of Colorado, speeding aggressively down an interstate highway, crossing directly into the neighboring state jurisdiction. I stared intently at the blinking red dot. They honestly thought they were completely untouchable. They thought they were driving off into a beautiful sunset on my hard-earned dime. But they had just made a catastrophic error. They had crossed a sovereign state line in a reported stolen vehicle. The legal stakes had just rapidly escalated from a standard local grand theft auto charge to a highly serious, potential federal offense. I picked up my phone, dialed the direct extension for Officer Gentry, and provided her with the exact GPS coordinates, the specific highway number, and the precise speed they were currently traveling. I got it, Gentry said, her voice incredibly tight with intense professional focus. I'm immediately forwarding this exact data to the state highway troopers in that specific jurisdiction right now. We will box them in before they even know what hit them. I absolutely could not stay inside my apartment any longer. The walls felt like they were rapidly closing in on me, suffocating me with the heavy memories of my parents invading my space. I ordered a premium Uber and went directly to the corporate office. When I finally walked onto the busy logistics floor, I must have looked exactly like a walking ghost. My skin was incredibly pale, there were heavy dark circles under my eyes from sleep deprivation, and my hands were still slightly trembling as I held my coffee cup. My department boss, Merritt, noticed my state immediately. Merritt was a formidable, 55-year-old woman who had aggressively clawed her way up the vicious corporate ladder. She wore incredibly sharp, tailored blazers, had absolutely zero tolerance for office nonsense, and possessed the kind of brutal street smarts that deeply intimidated most of the male executives. She took one highly observant look at me, grabbed my arm gently but firmly, and guided me directly into her private corner office, locking the heavy glass door securely behind us. "Sit down right now," she commanded, pointing to the expensive leather chair opposite her desk. "Drink this entire bottle of water." She handed me a cold bottle. "Now, look at me and tell me who died." I took a very long, shaky breath and told her absolutely everything. I told her about the stolen vehicle, the horrific lies, the romantic road trip, the active BOLO warrant, the GPS tracking, and the painful lifetime of being consistently treated like a highly disposable bank vault for my golden child sister. By the time I finally finished speaking, my voice was completely hoarse and my throat burned. Merritt didn't offer me any empty, pathetic pity. She didn't offer me useless platitudes or tell me that family dynamics are complicated and I should forgive them. She leaned aggressively across her massive mahogany desk, her sharp eyes fierce and uncompromising. "Veda, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Merritt said, her voice dropping incredibly low and sharp. "Toxic families are exactly like biological parasites. They will mercilessly suck you dry until you have absolutely nothing left to give, and then they will actively blame you for being empty. The vehicle situation is currently being handled perfectly by the police. But you need to completely protect your personal fortress. Right now. You must cut off the financial blood supply entirely. Have you thoroughly checked your finances today?" I blinked in surprise. "My finances? I pay for all my own things. My accounts are solely in my name." "Check them anyway," she ordered, pushing her personal laptop directly toward me. "Check every single one. Even the very old ones. Parasites always find a hidden backdoor to feed from." I logged into my primary banking portal. I carefully checked my main checking account and my high-yield savings account. Everything looked perfectly normal. No unauthorized withdrawals. Then a sudden, dark memory hit me. I remembered the old joint banking account. The specific one my parents had originally opened for me when I was a minor in high school. The exact one my father had previously drained to fund a Lowen's pyramid scheme 10 long years ago. I hadn't actively used it since I graduated college, assuming it was just sitting in the system dormant with a zero balance. I pulled up the deep archive records for that specific account. My eyes widened in absolute, sheer horror. The account was not dormant at all. It was deeply attached to my primary banking profile, which meant it actively drew from my expensive overdraft protection plan. For the past 3 consecutive years, there had been a highly consistent, recurring monthly automated charge of exactly $200. I clicked on the merchant details. It was going directly to an exclusive, highly prestigious luxury fitness club downtown. Lowen's Fitness Club. My parents had intentionally kept the old routing number, maliciously attached it to a Lowen's luxury gym membership, and let it quietly, consistently siphon money directly out of my overdraft protection, constantly racking up small, confusing banking fees that I had always just blindly assumed were standard maintenance errors. $200 a month. For 36 consecutive months. $7,200. They had actively stolen over $7,000 in luxury gym fees from me, just so my spoiled sister could take expensive Pilates classes and post aesthetic mirror selfies. All while I was working grueling 60-hour weeks managing freight logistics to barely get ahead. "I'm going to be physically sick," I whispered, turning the laptop screen to show Merritt the devastating transaction history. Merritt didn't flinch. Her expression hardened into pure granite. "Don't be sick, Veda. Be utterly ruthless. Call the bank fraud department immediately." I spent the next 2 highly intense hours sitting inside Merritt's secure office, executing a brutal, financial scorched earth protocol. I legally reported the recurring gym charges as malicious fraudulent activity. I demanded the bank close the old joint account permanently and irreversibly. I withdrew every single dollar from my current bank and initiated a massive wire transfer to a completely different banking institution where my parents didn't even know the corporate name. I aggressively froze my credit file with all 3 major national bureaus so they couldn't possibly try to open illicit loans or credit cards in my name. I changed every single password, every secure PIN, every security question. If my mother's maiden name was previously the answer, I changed it to a random, highly complex string of alphanumeric characters. I built a financial fortress so incredibly thick and heavily guarded that they would completely break their teeth trying to aggressively bite into it ever again. Just as I clicked the final confirmation button for the massive wire transfer, my smartphone buzzed loudly on the desk. It was an incoming call from Officer Gentry. I put the phone immediately on speaker mode so Merritt could hear the update. "Officer Gentry, do you have a status update for me?" "We got a confirmed hit." Gentry's voice crackled slightly through the speaker, sounding entirely too calm for the monumental news she was delivering. "State highway troopers successfully located your vehicle parked at a massive gas station near the state borderline. They quickly initiated a high-risk felony traffic stop. Your sister and a male passenger were forcefully taken into police custody without further incident. The vehicle has been legally impounded. I highly suggest you sit down, Veda." I looked over at Merritt, who was already nodding. "I'm sitting, officer. Your sister is currently being formally processed at the county jail facility. She is actively facing serious charges for possession of a stolen vehicle and illegally crossing state lines with stolen property. The male passenger is also being heavily questioned and held. They will likely be using their phone call to contact your parents very soon to desperately ask for bail money." My chest tightened with a complex mixture of intense relief and heavy dread. "And the car? Is my Bronco okay?" There was a very long, agonizing pause on the other end of the line. A terrible pause that made the blood run completely cold in my veins. "I cannot give you a full, detailed damage assessment over the phone," Gentry said very carefully, choosing her words with extreme caution. "You will need to drive out to the secure impound lot tomorrow morning with your official paperwork to formally claim it. But I want to mentally prepare you. It is absolutely not in the pristine condition you left it in." The line went completely dead. I stared blankly at the phone screen. My pristine, $65,000 custom vehicle. The physical manifestation of all my brutal hard work. Eloan had it for strictly less than 24 hours. What could she have possibly done to it in such a short amount of time? Merritt stood up, walked around the desk, and placed a highly comforting, firm hand on my trembling shoulder. "Go home, Veda. Get some heavy rest. Because tomorrow morning, we officially go to war." I packed up my things, the initial adrenaline rapidly fading away, leaving behind a cold, highly sharpened resolve. They had finally pushed me completely over the edge. There was absolutely no going back to being the quiet, compliant, invisible daughter. The old Veda they knew was dead and buried. I'm Win. Thank you so much for watching until the very end of this crazy roller coaster. If you can relate to Veda's struggle and completely support her badass decision to stand her ground, please drop an "I'm Win" in the comments below. That is our special secret code for the amazing viewers who stayed with us. I will personally heart and reply to every single comment with that keyword. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insane stories. You are not alone. The next morning arrived with a brutal, freezing downpour that matched the heavy exhaustion sitting in my chest. I woke up at 5 in the morning, my eyes burning from a severe lack of sleep and the lingering stress of the previous 24 hours. I had to rent a basic economy sedan from a local agency just to make the long drive across the state line to the specific county impound lot where my stolen vehicle was being held. The drive took 3 excruciating hours. My knuckles were entirely white as I gripped the cheap plastic steering wheel of the rental car, the windshield wipers aggressively fighting against the pouring rain. My mind raced with endless, terrifying scenarios. What did they do to my sanctuary? Did they crush it? Did they ruin the custom engine I had saved up for years to afford? I tried to push the dark thoughts away, focusing only on the gray highway stretching out in front of me. I finally pulled up to the impound lot just before 9 in the morning. It was a massive, depressing stretch of cracked asphalt surrounded by a towering chain-link fence topped with rusted barbed wire. The smell of leaking motor oil, wet dirt, and metallic decay hung heavy in the damp air. I parked the rental car, pulled my coat tightly around my shoulders to block the biting wind, and walked into the small, dimly lit front office. The clerk sitting behind the thick bulletproof glass looked entirely exhausted, barely glancing up from his computer screen when I slid my driver license, the vehicle title, and the official police report case number through the metal slot. He typed slowly for what felt like an eternity. The rhythmic clacking of his keyboard echoed loudly in the quiet, grim room. Finally, he printed out a release form, stamped it with red ink, and pushed it back through the slot along with a heavy ring of keys. My keys. The same smart key my parents had stolen directly from my kitchen counter. Row M, spot 112, the clerk mumbled, pointing a lazy finger toward a heavy metal side door. Take your time. It is pretty rough out there today. I pushed through the metal door and stepped out into the massive yard. The freezing rain immediately soaked into my hair as I walked down the long, seemingly endless rows of vehicles. There were cars crushed like soda cans, vehicles burned down to the bare metal frames, and sedans with shattered windows covered by cheap plastic tarps. It felt like a graveyard for broken machines. My heart pounded so hard in my chest it echoed in my ears. Row J, Row K, Row L. Then I turned the corner into Row M. I stopped dead in my tracks. The breath was violently knocked out of my lungs. There it was. My 2024 custom Ford Bronco. The vehicle that represented 6 years of skipped meals, canceled vacations, and grueling 60-hour work weeks. It was parked haphazardly between a rusted pickup truck and a smashed minivan. I slowly walked toward it, my boots splashing softly in the oily puddles, unable to process the sheer level of destruction my sister had managed to inflict in less than 48 hours. The exterior, which had been pristine and glossy just 2 days ago, was entirely coated in thick, hardened brown mud. It looked like they had intentionally driven it through a deep swamp. But the mud was not the worst part. As I stepped closer to the driver's side door, I saw it. A deep, jagged scratch ran all the way from the front quarter panel, dragging aggressively across the heavy metal doors and ending at the rear taillight. Someone had taken a sharp metal key or a knife and intentionally carved a deep line right through the expensive custom paint job. The metal underneath was exposed to the freezing rain, already beginning to show the faintest signs of rust. My hands trembled violently as I reached out and unlocked the door. I pulled the heavy handle and the door swung open. A horrific smell immediately hit my face. It was a sickening mixture of stale cigarette smoke, spilled alcohol, cheap artificial vanilla perfume, and rotting fast food. I stared into the cabin of my beloved vehicle, my stomach twisting into painful knots. The expensive, imported suede seats that I had waited months to have specially installed were entirely ruined. There were greasy, discarded hamburger wrappers and crushed French fries ground deeply into the carpet floor mats. A massive puddle of sticky, dried energy drink coated the center console, seeping into the electronic gear shifter. But the detail that truly broke something inside of me was the driver's side seat. Right in the center of the delicate, premium suede, there was a dark, charred circle. A cigarette burn. They had carelessly dropped a lit cigarette directly onto my custom upholstery and just let it burn through the expensive fabric. Eloan had treated my $65,000 achievement like it was a disposable, worthless trash can. She had intentionally destroyed the physical proof of my hard work simply because she felt entitled to use it. I did not cry. For the first time in my life when facing my family's cruelty, no tears came to my eyes. The deep, agonizing sadness that had defined my childhood was entirely gone, replaced by a cold, calculating, and undeniable rage. I pulled my smartphone out of my coat pocket. I turned on the video camera and began meticulously recording every single inch of the devastating damage. I filmed the deep scratch on the exterior paint. I filmed the crushed food, the sticky console, the lingering smell of stale smoke, and the unforgivable cigarette burn on the suede seat. I narrated the video with a terrifyingly calm, steady voice, documenting the exact date, the time, and the current state of my stolen property. I was gathering my ammunition. Just as I finished recording the interior damage, I heard the heavy crunch of gravel behind me. I turned around sharply to see Officer Gentry walking toward me, her uniform protected by a dark rain jacket. She had driven out to the county impound lot to oversee the final processing of the vehicle. She stopped next to me, looking at the ruined interior of the Bronco. She shook her head slowly, her expression grim. "I told you to prepare yourself, Veda. People who do not have to work for things rarely respect the value of them." "They ruined it," I said, my voice eerily flat. "In less than 2 days, she destroyed 6 years of my life." Officer Gentry reached into her deep jacket pocket. "The exterior and interior damage is bad, Veda. But I need you to see what we found when we searched the vehicle during the felony traffic stop. Your sister and her boyfriend did not just take this truck for a romantic joyride. They had a very specific plan." She pulled out a thick, clear plastic evidence bag and held it out to me. Inside the bag were several specialized metal tools, a heavy-duty lug nut wrench, and a printed piece of paper. "What is this?" I asked, staring at the printed paper inside the plastic. "It is a printed conversation from a social media marketplace," Gentry explained, her voice dropping to a serious tone. "Your sister and her boyfriend had already arranged a private buyer located in Las Vegas. They were actively planning to strip the custom all-terrain wheels, the upgraded suspension parts, and your entire premium sound system the moment they crossed the Nevada state line. They were going to sell your custom parts for raw cash on the black market. They had the removal tools sitting right in your trunk." I stared at the heavy-duty tools in the evidence bag. The ultimate betrayal washed over me like a freezing tidal wave. They were not just borrowing it. They were actively dissecting it for profit. "I want them to burn," I whispered into the cold rain. Officer Gentry nodded slowly. "Then you need to come with me to the local precinct. Your parents just arrived there to demand her release." The drive from the gritty impound lot to the local county police precinct took another 45 minutes. I followed Officer Gentry's patrol cruiser, my mind running through complex calculations, treating this entire situation like a fractured supply chain that needed to be aggressively dismantled. I parked my rental sedan in the visitor lot, the freezing rain still pouring from the gray sky. I took a deep breath, gathered my coat, and walked through the heavy glass double doors of the precinct. The front lobby was chaotic, filled with the sounds of ringing telephones and muffled police radios. But above all that standard background noise, I could clearly hear a painfully familiar, shrill voice echoing down the hallway. "This is an outrageous misunderstanding. My daughter is an innocent young woman. You are traumatizing her over a simple family disagreement." It was my mother, Phaedra. I walked slowly around the corner and entered the main waiting area. My mother was standing aggressively at the front desk, pointing a trembling finger at a highly exhausted desk sergeant. My father, Orson, was standing right behind her, his face bright red with unchecked anger. And sitting on a hard wooden bench in the corner was Calloway, Alohan's deadbeat boyfriend. He had apparently been released on his own recognizance while they held Alohan for further questioning regarding the stolen property crossing state lines. Calloway looked entirely unbothered, chewing loudly on a piece of gum. Calloway spotted me first. He stood up, puffing out his chest, trying to look intimidating. "Well, look who finally decided to show up. You are literally crazy, Veda. You called the cops on your own blood over a stupid piece of metal. You better tell these pigs to drop the charges right now before I lose my temper. My father spun around rapidly at the sound of my name. He marched directly toward me, his hands clenched into tight fists. You ungrateful, malicious brat. Do you have any idea what you have done? Your sister is sitting in a holding cell crying her eyes out. You have humiliated this entire family. You will march up to that desk right this second, tell them you gave her the keys, and drop this absurd stolen vehicle report. My mother rushed over, grabbing my arm with her sharp fingernails. Veda, please. She is terrified in there. It is just a car. I will pay to have it washed, I promise. Just tell them it was a big mistake so we can all go home and put this ugly mess behind us. I looked at the three of them. My father, furious and demanding. My mother, using weaponized tears to manipulate my guilt. Calloway, arrogant and deeply disrespectful. A week ago, this intense combined pressure would have caused me to fold instantly. I would have cried, apologized for overreacting, and spent the next 3 years paying off the damages in silence just to keep the peace. But I was not that woman anymore. I gently but firmly pried my mother's fingers off my coat sleeve and took a deliberate step back. I am not dropping a single charge, I said, my voice echoing clearly through the crowded lobby. Several officers stopped what they were doing to watch the confrontation. She stole my $65,000 vehicle, ruined the custom interior, keyed the exterior paint, and drove it across state lines. She just wanted to celebrate her anniversary, my mother wailed, loudly attempting to gain the sympathy of the surrounding police officers. She is young and she makes mistakes. You are her older sister, you are supposed to protect her. Protect her? I repeated, a dark, cold smile touching the corners of my mouth. Is that what you call it? A simple anniversary trip. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. Thanks to the advanced dashcam system hardwired into my Bronco, everything spoken inside the cabin was automatically recorded and synced directly to my secure cloud storage. I had downloaded the specific audio files while sitting in the rental car. I turned the media volume up to the maximum level and pressed play. The crisp, clear audio of Aloan and Calloway's voices filled the quiet police lobby. Babe, this truck is insane, Calloway's recorded voice laughed. Your sister is such a dumb corporate workaholic. She probably won't even notice it's gone until Monday morning. I know, right? Aloan's voice replied, sounding smug and deeply cruel. She owes me anyway. She always makes me feel bad because she has a fancy job and I don't. Mom said Veda has plenty of money, so she can easily buy another one. My parents froze entirely. The color rapidly drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw dropped open slightly. The audio recording continued, delivering the final, fatal blow. So, what is the actual plan when we hit Vegas? Aloan asked on the recording. I already talked to the guy on the marketplace, Calloway answered smoothly. We pull into the warehouse district, strip the all-terrain tires, unbolt the custom suspension, and rip out the touchscreen and speakers. He is giving us $4,000 in raw cash for the parts. We leave the stripped truck on some random side street and enjoy our Vegas trip with Veda's money. She is too stupid to figure it out. I pressed pause. The silence in the police precinct was so profound you could hear a pin drop on the tile floor. I looked directly at my parents. They looked like they had just been struck by a massive bolt of lightning. The undeniable reality of their golden child's true nature was playing out in high-definition audio in front of law enforcement. She was not a confused young woman making a harmless mistake. She was a calculated, malicious thief plotting to strip my property and sell it for gambling money in Nevada. Calloway visibly panicked. He took a step backward, his fake tough guy persona instantly crumbling. That is illegal wiretapping. You cannot record us without our permission. Tell them that is illegal. Officer Gentry stepped out from a nearby hallway, her arms crossed firmly over her chest. Actually, sir, Colorado is a one-party consent state. Furthermore, there is no legal expectation of privacy when you are operating a stolen vehicle belonging to someone else. That audio is entirely admissible as evidence. My mother burst into genuine, hysterical tears, dropping to her knees on the precinct floor. She reached out, trying to grab my legs. Veda. Veda, please. She is desperate. We didn't know she was going to sell the parts, I swear to God. She just needs a little financial help. You have so much, why can't you just let this go? If they charge her with this, she will go to prison. It will ruin her entire future. I looked down at the woman who had enabled my abuse for 30 years. I looked at my father, who was suddenly entirely silent, unable to defend the indefensible audio recording. Her future was ruined the day you taught her that stealing from me was an acceptable way to survive, I said, my voice cold and hollow. I turned away from them and looked directly at Officer Gentry. I want to press charges to the fullest extent of the law. Grand theft auto, intentional destruction of private property, and conspiracy to traffic stolen automotive parts across state lines. Do not offer her a plea deal on my behalf. As I walked out of the police station, leaving my parents weeping on the floor, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The war was moving from the physical world into the digital one. By the time I returned to Denver and collapsed onto my living room couch, my smartphone was rapidly overheating from the sheer influx of notifications. My family, desperate to control the narrative and entirely unwilling to accept their monumental defeat at the police station, had chosen the nuclear option. They took the war to Facebook. Aunt Tamsin, acting as the primary general of the Flying Monkeys, had crafted a massive, highly emotional public post. She tagged my parents, Aloan, and roughly 40 extended family members and close community friends. The post read, "Please send urgent prayers for our family today. We are dealing with an unimaginable betrayal. A certain older sister, who has always been deeply jealous of her younger siblings' happiness, has maliciously falsely accused her own flesh and blood of a terrible crime over a simple, innocent misunderstanding regarding a borrowed car. This older sister, who sits in her fancy corporate office judging us all, is actively trying to send a sweet, innocent young woman to a cold prison cell just to satisfy her own sick ego. Please pray that this bitter, heartless woman finds God and drops these ridiculous charges before she destroys our family forever." Hashtag family first, hashtag pray for Aloan underneath the post. The comments were flooding and rapidly. Neighbors I had known since childhood were leaving angry emojis. Extended cousins were calling me a sociopath and a greedy corporate snob. My mother chimed in the comments, playing the tragic victim to perfection. I am so heartbroken. I raised Veda to love her sister, but money has turned her into a monster. We are currently trying to gather funds for a lawyer because Veda refuses to show mercy. I sat alone in my quiet apartment, reading the digital character assassination. A few days ago, this public shaming would have devastated me. I would have frantically drafted a long, pleading apology message, begging them to understand my side. I would have internalized their toxic lies and genuinely wondered if I was indeed the villain of the story. But as I looked at the dark screen, a profound sense of calm washed over me. They wanted a public audience? Fine. I would give them a show they would never, ever forget. I opened my laptop, cracked my knuckles, and began crafting a single, definitive public post. I made sure the privacy setting was set to public so anyone on the internet could see it and share it. I started typing. Since Aunt Tamsin and my parents have decided to make private legal matters public, I feel it is only fair to provide the community with the full, unfiltered truth regarding the innocent misunderstanding they are referencing. Attached below is the undeniable evidence of how this family operates. I attached 4 specific items to the post. Item 1. A clear, high-resolution photo of the devastating interior damage to my $65,000 Ford Bronco. The crushed garbage, the spilled energy drink, and a close-up shot of the malicious cigarette burn right in the middle of the expensive custom suede seat. I also included the photo of the deep, intentional key scratch on the exterior paint. Item 2. A screenshot of the original selfie Aloan had sent me, showing Calloway resting his muddy boots on my pristine dashboard with the mocking caption thanking me for the late birthday present. Item 3. The financial bombshell. I attached a redacted PDF of the official bank statements proving that my parents had secretly siphoned exactly $200 a month from my high school bank account for 36 consecutive months. I highlighted the total amount in bright yellow, $7,200 stolen directly from my overdraft to fund Alohan's luxury fitness club membership while I worked 60-hour weeks. Item 4. The digital audio file from the dash cam, clearly capturing Alohan and Callaway actively plotting to strip the vehicle's all-terrain tires, suspension, and sound system to sell for $4,000 in raw cash on the Las Vegas black market. I concluded the post with a final, devastating paragraph. This is not a story about a jealous older sister. This is a story about a family that firmly believes they are entitled to steal my property, drain my bank accounts, and destroy my hard work just to fund their favorite child's vacations. Alohan is currently sitting in a county jail cell because she stole a vehicle and conspired to traffic stolen parts across state lines. If asking for basic legal accountability makes me a monster, then I wear that title with pride. Do not contact me again. I hit the blue publish button. I leaned back on my couch, poured myself a large glass of cold water, and watched the digital explosion unfold in real time. The ironic link of social media is that toxic families rely on it for validation, but it can turn against them with brutal speed when the actual truth is exposed. Within 10 minutes, the tide turned violently. The very same neighbors who had called me a sociopath were rapidly deleting their comments on Aunt Tamsin's page and flooding my post with shock and outrage. A prominent community member, Mrs. Higgins, commented, "Phaedra, you stole $7,000 from your own hardworking daughter to pay for a gym? That is absolutely disgusting. You should be deeply ashamed of yourself." Extended cousins who had previously supported my parents began sharing my post, expressing their sheer horror at the dashcam audio recording. The public facade my parents had meticulously maintained for 30 years shattered into a million tiny pieces. Everyone finally saw them for what they truly were, enablers who funded a thief. Then came the plot twist I didn't even plan. Callaway's parents saw the viral post. They heard the crystal-clear audio of their son aggressively plotting a felony crime. Callaway's mother, deeply humiliated by the overwhelming public backlash from their own friends, commented directly on the post, "Veda, we had no idea he was doing this. We are horrified. We have officially informed Callaway that he is no longer welcome in our home. We will not be providing him with a lawyer or any bail money. We are so sorry for the damage he helped cause." Alohan and Callaway were now entirely isolated. No bail money. No public sympathy. No family protection. My parents were left scrambling, deleting their own posts, hiding their profiles, and dealing with the severe social fallout of being exposed as thieves and liars in their own community. I turned off my phone, the silence of my apartment finally feeling peaceful. The war was officially won in the court of public opinion. A week later, I checked my mailbox and found a thick, heavy envelope stamped with the official seal of the state judicial system. It was a formal court summons. The criminal trial date was set. The final battle was approaching, and I was ready to watch the empire fall. 2 months later, the freezing winter weather had given way to a crisp, bright Denver morning. I found myself sitting on a hard wooden bench in the sterile hallway outside courtroom 4B. The air smelled strongly of lemon floor disinfectant, old paper documents, and raw nervous energy. I wore a sharp, tailored black suit, my posture perfectly straight, my expression entirely unreadable. My parents were sitting on a bench directly across the wide hallway. They looked like they had aged 10 years in the span of 60 days. My father's shoulders were heavily slumped, and he kept rubbing his temples. My mother was whispering frantically in Spanish, twisting a damp tissue nervously between her fingers. Alohan was sitting squarely between them, wearing a plain gray sweater that was obviously chosen to make her look young and innocent. Her leg bounced rapidly up and down, a clear sign of intense anxiety. None of them dared to make eye contact with me. When the court clerk finally opened the heavy oak doors and called out the specific case number, we all filed inside silently. The courtroom was large, imposing, and echoing. The presiding official was Judge Sylvan, a formidable woman in her late 50s with sharp, penetrating eyes and a voice that commanded immediate, undeniable respect. She flipped carefully through the thick stack of case files, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. She possessed a reputation for being exceptionally strict and having zero tolerance for fake remorse or familial manipulation. "The defendant, Eloan Reyes, please rise," Judge Sylvan instructed, her voice cutting through the quiet room like a sharp knife. Eloan stood up slowly, her hands trembling violently as she gripped the wooden podium. Her defense lawyer stood next to her. Thanks to a plea negotiation initiated by the district attorney, which I had reluctantly agreed to only because it guaranteed restitution, Eloan was formally entering a guilty plea to a lesser felony charge to avoid a lengthy prison sentence. "Ms. Reyes," Judge Sylvan said, looking over her glasses. "I understand you have a written statement you wish to read into the official court record prior to sentencing?" Eloan nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, Your Honor." She unfolded a piece of paper. The performance began exactly as I expected. She started crying, large, dramatic tears rolling down her cheeks. "I, Eloan Reyes, formally admit that I took my older sister's vehicle without her explicit permission. I knew the truck was not legally mine. I took it anyway because I foolishly assumed she would eventually forgive me, because we are family. I made a terrible, stupid mistake. I am so sorry for the pain I caused." It was a textbook, lawyer-crafted apology. It sounded sweet, apologetic, and entirely fake. She carefully omitted the fact that she planned to strip the car and sell the parts for cash. Judge Sylvan listened in silence, tapping her pen. When Eloan finished, the judge leaned forward, her expression hardening into pure steel. "Ms. Reyes," Judge Sylvan began, her tone chillingly cold. "I have read the extensive police reports. I have seen the photographic evidence of the profound damage you inflicted on the interior and exterior of the vehicle. And, most importantly, I have listened to the transcribed audio recording from the vehicle's dashcam. Do not stand in my courtroom and attempt to frame this as a simple, innocent family misunderstanding. You actively conspired to traffic stolen automotive parts. You treated your sister's hard-earned property with malicious contempt." Eloan flinched, the fake tears instantly stopping as genuine fear washed over her face. My parents gasped quietly from the gallery seating. "Given your lack of prior criminal convictions," Judge Sylvan continued, reading from the official sentencing document, "this court formally sentences the defendant to 12 months of strict, supervised probation. Furthermore, your state driver's license is officially suspended for a mandatory period of 2 years. My mother let out a small, relieved sigh. She thought Eloan had escaped the worst of it. But Judge Sylvan was not finished. However, the judge raised her voice slightly, silencing the room. "The concept of justice requires making the victim whole. Therefore, I am formally ordering full financial restitution. Based on the certified estimates provided by the authorized dealership, the cost to repair the custom exterior paint, replace the ruined premium suede interior, and cover the massive impound and towing fees is extensive." Judge Sylvan looked directly into Eloan's terrified eyes. "You are hereby ordered to pay restitution to the victim in the exact amount of $15,800. This sum must be paid in full to the court registry within 30 days. If you fail to produce this money, your probation will be immediately revoked, and you will serve the remainder of your sentence in the county correctional facility." The heavy wooden gavel hit the sounding block with a massive, echoing crack. The entire courtroom erupted in silent shock. $15,800. It was a staggering, monumental sum of money. Eloan gripped the wooden podium, her face turning chalk white. "Your Honor, please. I don't have that kind of money. I am currently unemployed. I can't pay that in 30 days. Judge Sylvan did not show a single ounce of sympathy. She shifted her sharp gaze directly toward the gallery, locking eyes with my mother and father. "Then I strongly suggest you ask the individuals who actively aided and abetted your crime to help you," Judge Sylvan stated coldly. "The law is very clear. If you cannot pay, the financial burden falls on your support system. If the funds are not produced, the court will authorize the aggressive seizure of personal assets, including vehicles and property equity, to satisfy the debt. We are adjourned." The reality of the situation crashed down on my parents like a falling concrete building. Orson's knees visibly buckled, and he had to grip the heavy wooden bench tightly just to prevent himself from collapsing onto the floor. Phaedra covered her mouth with her trembling hands, her eyes wide with sheer, unadulterated terror. They had spent their entire lives shielding Aloan from minor consequences. Now, in order to keep their precious golden child out of a prison cell, they were going to have to drain their own retirement savings, take out massive loans, or risk losing their own home. Their toxic enabling had finally delivered the ultimate, devastating bill, and the cost was financial ruin. As the courtroom slowly emptied, I remained standing near the front row, calmly buttoning my suit jacket. My parents slowly shuffled toward the heavy exit doors. Aloan walked a few feet behind them, looking entirely defeated, her head hung low in profound shame. As they passed me in the aisle, my mother stopped. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic pleading. "Veda," my mother whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of the massive debt. "Please. We are going to lose everything. We will have to leverage the house. Can you please talk to the lawyers? Tell them you don't need the money right now. Please." I stood perfectly still in the quiet aisle of the courtroom, looking at the broken, desperate woman standing before me. My father stood right beside her, entirely stripped of his arrogant pride, unable to even look me in the eye. For 30 long years, they had demanded my endless sacrifice. They had stolen my money, destroyed my property, and expected me to smile and bear the heavy burden because that was my assigned role in the family dynamic. Now, the tables had turned with brutal, undeniable finality. I held the absolute power. I held their financial future in the palm of my hand. I looked my mother directly in the eyes. My voice was calm, steady, and terrifyingly cold. "Family helps family, right, Mom?" I said, throwing her favorite manipulative phrase right back into her face. "You told me Aloan needed the car more than I did. Well, now she needs $15,800 more than you need your comfortable retirement fund. Go help your golden child. And never, ever speak to me again." I turned my back on them, gripping my leather briefcase tightly, and walked out of the heavy oak doors. I did not look back. I did not hesitate. As I walked down the marble steps of the courthouse and stepped out into the bright Denver sunlight, a massive, suffocating weight that I had carried since childhood finally lifted from my shoulders. The transaction was complete. The profound shift in power was finalized. I was no longer the invisible victim. I was the untouchable victor. Exactly 1 year later, my life looked entirely different. The heavy, toxic noise that used to surround my daily existence had completely faded away into a peaceful, highly productive silence. Without the constant financial and emotional drain of my family, my career skyrocketed. I was officially promoted to Director of Regional Logistics at my firm, effectively doubling my salary. I moved out of my small apartment and rented a beautiful, spacious loft on the west side of Denver, featuring massive windows that overlooked the stunning Rocky Mountains. And my Ford Bronco? Thanks to the massive restitution check the court forced my parents to pay, the vehicle was beautifully and meticulously restored. The custom exterior paint was flawlessly repaired, the premium suede interior was completely replaced, and the engine was professionally detailed. It looked even better than the day I bought it off the dealership lot. My parents, on the other hand, faced the harsh reality of their actions. Through the grapevine of distant relatives, I learned that they were forced to aggressively downsize. They had to sell the large, comfortable family home I grew up in and move into a small, cramped apartment in the distant suburbs just to cover the massive court debt and the legal fees associated with Aloan's felony defense. Calloway remained entirely out of the picture, having vanished the moment his own parents cut off his financial support. One crisp Tuesday afternoon, I checked my mailbox and found a plain, unmarked white envelope sitting inside. There was no return address, but I instantly recognized the messy, hurried handwriting on the front. It was from Aloan. I walked into my quiet kitchen, poured myself a hot cup of premium coffee, and slowly sliced the envelope open with a knife. Inside was a single piece of lined notebook paper. The letter did not contain a frantic plea for money. It did not contain any toxic manipulation or blame shifting. It was shockingly brief. Veda, I know you probably will throw this away, but I needed to write it. Because of my felony record, I couldn't get a corporate job. I am currently working the graveyard shift as a waitress at a diner to pay mom and dad back for the court money. My feet constantly bleed, and I smell like grease every single night. I finally understand how hard you worked for that prom dress and how hard you worked for that truck. I am actively learning how to live in this world without stealing from other people just to stay afloat. I know I deeply hurt you. I am truly sorry. I sat at my kitchen island, reading the short paragraph over and over again. She was finally experiencing the exact same brutal reality I had survived at 17 years old. She was finally learning the true value of hard work, not through gentle parenting, but through the harsh, unforgiving consequences of the real world. I slowly folded the piece of notebook paper in half, walked over to my desk, and slipped it quietly into a bottom drawer. I felt absolutely no rush to grab a pen and write a reply. I felt no urgent need to call her and offer a tearful reconciliation. Some broken stories do not need a happy, tearful family reunion in order to find true closure. Sometimes, the quiet acknowledgement of the undeniable truth is more than enough. I had successfully reclaimed my life, my finances, and my sanity. The strict boundaries I had built out of necessity had saved my future. As I walked out to my restored vehicle that evening, watching the bright orange sunset reflect beautifully off the pristine custom paint, a quiet, powerful truth settled deeply into my bones. What is mine stays mine. Not because I aggressively guard it with fear, but because I finally learned how to fiercely protect the woman standing behind the boundaries. Sometimes you have to ruthlessly cut off a rotting branch in order to save the entire tree. I often wonder how others perceive my choices. Am I truly the cold, heartless villain my extended family still claims I am? Did I go too far by pushing my own parents to the very brink of financial ruin over a stolen vehicle? Or did I simply hand them the exact, brutal lesson they should have taught my sister a decade ago? If you found yourself standing in my shoes, staring at the shattered remains of everything you worked for, would you have accepted that massive restitution check and walked away? Or would the intense pressure of family loyalty have forced you to drop the charges? I genuinely want to know where you stand on this. Tell me your honest thoughts in the comments section below. Do not forget to hit the like button, and if you believe that respecting personal boundaries is more important than toxic family loyalty, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We have plenty more intense stories coming your way. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are never alone.